Marseille, a club who has certainly garnered an interesting reputation through the years. You had the bribery scandal from the early 90s, investigation of former club presidents for organized crime investigations back in 2015, fans attacking the club's training ground about 5 years ago, players fighting each other in the dressing room, signing players who have been either convicted of crimes, investigated for crimes, or others.
On attendait des tueurs. On a eu des chatons.
Well, that quote has a more ominous sound to it in that context. I mean, my guy Maxwell did a video where the thumbnail is Prison FC, so check that out if you're interested. But in this video, we're going over why Marseille supporters are angry about their kittens saying stuff like this.
Cette équipe me déçoit et pourtant je suis supporter depuis très longtemps de Marseille, mais là j'en ai marre. Franchement, j'en ai marre.
Y a rien. C'est vide. Oh, et on paye, nous. Eux, ils s'en foutent.
I mean, surely it's not a surprise for them, at least, as Marseille has gone through 35 different managers in this century alone. Recently, there were empty stands in their stadium in protest of the running of the club. There were supporters trying to break into the presidential suites at the stadium following another disappointing result. There has been the dismissal of a coach, the resignation of another director, a historic loss in Le Classique, lost the Trophée des Champions, and a historic failure in their Champions League elimination. Marseille supporters are going through it again, and more fireworks at the training ground wouldn't come as a surprise, unfortunately. So let's go over how we have built to this, step by step, in chronological order. So maybe you've seen that fairly viral clip of Roberto De Zerbi tearing into Ismail Kone, a now former player, from Marseille's 6-part behind-the-scenes series that they released last year. I highly recommend giving that series a watch, by the way, if you want. It's free on their YouTube channel, but anyway, their promotion aside. I include that just to show that, like, some coaches, De Zerbi's methods are a bit more aggressive than others. I'm not saying he's doing wrong for doing so, as they have got him to a point where a lot of top clubs are interested in his services. He's yet to win a top trophy, but he has absolutely climbed the managerial ladder in Europe. However, another player, Amir Murillo, would similarly get embarrassed in front of his teammates during a video session, and he was also told to leave the club, and he did so. De Zerbi was largely a success in his first season as coach at Marseille, but he did have some rotten spells as well. Winter into spring of last season saw Marseille lose 5 of 7 matches, but they cleaned up well to finish in second and qualify for the Champions League. With some investment into the squad, you could see that De Zerbi was building something. But tensions were still high within the squad, clearly, as Adrien Rabiot and Jonathan Rowe got into a fistfight in the dressing room following a loss to Stade Rennais on the first day of the 2025-26 season. De Zerbi later described the moment as, quote, 2 employees punching each other, as if they were in an English pub, end quote. Now with De Zerbi, one guarantee with his time at clubs is that it's mostly quality but incredibly inconsistent as well, which continued to be the case during the 25-26 season across all competitions. But with PSG suffering a slow start to the season, Marseille was capable of reaching first on match day 8. But since then, things returned to De Zerbi's inconsistency. Fans were questioning everyone at that time, mostly the players, but De Zerbi's history wasn't ignored. Then some interesting things began happening. Now, Mehdi Benatia had always tied his success as sporting director of Marseille and his job to that of De Zerbi's in the past, but some circumstances point to perhaps difficulties in their relationship at times, which again is normal, just like training ground bust-ups, they are normal. But when Marseille traveled to Kuwait for the Trophée des Champions against PSG, Benatia called for a team meeting, of which everyone attended, except De Zerbi. And there was also allegedly a disagreement between Benatia and club captain Leonardo Balerdi. In the match itself, Marseille couldn't get it over the line. They led 2-1 until the 95th minute when PSG equalized, and then defeated Marseille on penalties. And it was here that Benatia dropped a cryptic line that perhaps pointed himself to the exit door, as well as De Zerbi, as he said after the final loss against PSG, quote, "Before long, you'll see that there will be other people in our place, and they too will need time to work. At Marseille, you never have time. It's always adversity, criticism, that's the truth," end quote. Okay, that's an interesting one, depending on what he meant by before long, which is a bit arbitrary, right? Later in January, Zerbi and Marseille had their final match in the Champions League. Going into their match away to Club Brugge, Opta actually had their chances of advancing to the knockout rounds as just above 94%. Only 94%. Wow, surely only a colossal failure could eliminate them, right? Well, it actually took a colossal failure coupled with an incredibly rare moment of football heritage when Benfica's Anatoly Trubin scored a fourth Benfica goal to send them through at Marseille's expense. A rare freak occurrence, yes, but Marseille had their fate in their own hands, and with that heavy 3-0 loss, snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, so to speak. More inconsistency from Zerbi and his team. Mehdi Benatia, in response to Marseille's failure on that night, said that it was, quote, a night, shameful. When you are a club like us, you can lose matches like we lost in Madrid, like we lost in Lisbon, but you can't lose like we did tonight. I hope the players are aware that this was gross misconduct. I lost a lot of matches in my career, but rarely have I felt this feeling of shame, conceding 6 goals in 2 matches. And it was here where you started to hear murmurs of a strained relationship between Benatia and club president Pablo Longoria, often criticized Longoria. Under Longoria, Marseille have been consistently unstable, with a long list of sporting directors coming and going from the club during his presidency. When he is upset, fans believe that the sporting director is on their way, them or the head coach. Now, in Marseille's next match, they failed to get a win away to Paris FC, 2-2 draw. They did manage to defeat Stade Rennais in the Coupe de France 3-0, which was a highlight of a not-so-great run of matches, but then the big crash happened. So, Le Classique, as you know, is one of the top football rivalries in France, and with that on the horizon, the club called an emergency meeting that included executives, coaching staff, players, and a select group of supporters. Now, by all accounts, it wasn't a meeting that exploded into chaos or anything like that. It was quite calm, and the aim was to create unity amongst the squad, the club, and supporters as the season was slipping away from them. Try to get things back on track, everyone moving in the same direction. But in Le Classique, well, to use Benatia's words again, it was another shitty and shameful night.
The collapse after the break has been really troubling for Marseille, and the way in which PSG have gone about their business tonight.
So following this result, leaders of several supporters groups met up to discuss things, coming to the conclusion that the club should consider stripping Balerdi of his captaincy and sacking Zerbi. That meeting happened on the Monday after the PSG disaster, and by the afternoon on Tuesday, Zerbi had indeed been sacked. In response to this, Mehdi Benatia also handed in his resignation, but it is alleged that Pablo Longoria and the owner of the club, Frank McCourt, rejected his resignation. It's thought that Benatia believed that the failure wasn't entirely on Zerbi, but on himself as well. Did this alleged rift between himself and Longoria come into play here? Perhaps. But then you had, a football insider, Sacha Tavolieri, saying that Mehdi Benatia is tired of the constant drama at Marseille, the circus, and that he will likely leave at the end of the season as he carries a lot of interest from clubs in Serie A. I added the circus part. That was me. Sacha didn't say that. But moving past that, you began to hear supporters growing even more and more unhappy with the club. They were upset with the players, upset with Zerbi. Some were upset that Zerbi was let go, and seemingly all of them were upset with Longoria and McCourt, some pointing to Benatia as well. All of them agreed that the club was failing at all levels, and to show their dissatisfaction, they organized a protest for their next home match against RC Strasbourg. That match fell on Saturday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, and for the first 15 minutes, the main supporter stand was completely empty, only containing banners that read things like, "Empty stands as a sign of protest for a club in self-destruction. All of your projects go up in smoke, all these wasted years." As well as another that read, "McCourt/Longoria, go away." Very strange atmosphere, perfect for a match that would go just about as well as all Marseille matches recently, leading only to blow their lead through a 97th minute equalizer from Strasbourg, which enraged the supporters further. 20 to 30 of them tried to break their way into the presidential suites at the Stade Vélodrome. They failed to do so. The fallout of this saw Mehdi Benatia's resignation, a second attempt, go through this time as he made a lengthy post on Instagram about it. In fact, it wasn't really a second attempt, but he had agreed to oversee things until the match against Strasbourg. He had handed in his resignation on February 9th, and it was made public on February 15th. So, absolute chaos at the club, supporters enraged, the team failing more and more all the time, dropping from first after 8 match days in Ligue 1 to fourth, with Lyon getting further and further away from them, out of their reach, as they surge up the standings while Marseille stagnate and fall. But for one more twist, surely not to be the final twist of this season, on February 17th, 2 days after resigning, it was announced that Mehdi Benatia was back as the sporting director at Marseille at least until the end of the season, and on top of that, Pablo Longoria would step away from footballing matters and, as the announcement read, would step into more of an institutional role in order to, quote, represent Marseille within French and especially European bodies. Okay, pretty vague. A bit of a rejig though, with that division between Longoria and Benatia taken out of the equation by having footballing matters almost entirely under Benatia's control, or so it's assumed, while Longoria moves on to represent Marseille, as the statement said. So, it's been a wild one, and it won't stop being a wild one for Marseille, as this is just how things go with this club. Things have always been a bit crazy, and you can bet they will continue to be. Thank you as always for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this, then go ahead and hit the like or subscribe button, or hey, both if you want. I'm Adrian. I release a couple of these videos per week, and so I'll see you in one next week. Later.